They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You can play any and every position. From coaching, to kicking, to receiving, to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, let's see that again in slow motion. Get off me. And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today. Yeah.
I mix what I like. Hey, what's up, world? Welcome again to I Mix What I Like live right here at Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball. Very happy to be your host. Go ahead and let folks know that we're back up and running again. Invite someone to join you. Let folks know that you are here. Like, share, subscribe. Put the live in your socials. As the ear doctor says, tell a friend to tell a friend that it's on again. We have a very special show this afternoon or morning, or I don't know, who knows what time it is, wherever you are. And without further ado, let me just start to, her full bio is already linked in the show description. But our next guest has been a longtime comrade of mine, friend of the program, a longtime activist, organizer, scholar, spokesperson, one of the earliest in what was called hip-hop activism, one of the more outspoken voices in that effort, in that movement, someone who has looked to build bridges and bridge gaps between so-called Black and Brown communities. She comes out of the Africana Studies and Research Center, as well as I do, under the original tutelage and guidance of its founding director, Dr. James Turner. She is a mother, she is a spouse, she is many other things. And of course, she's here now to join us. And of course, I'm talking about Rosa Clemente. Rosa, sister, good to see you again. Welcome back to the platform. How you doing?
It's great to be here. Thank you so much. And congratulations to all of you for an incredible, probably a little bit more than a year or about
2 years. 2 years now. Yeah.
But I'm so happy to be on. Thank you.
No. So as I was saying, you know, you reached out, and I was happy to be able to host you once again. I was letting folks know this morning that I had watched your Instagram live of not, at least I thought it was more recent. Maybe it was longer ago than I realized, but talking about the report on the Hip Hop Museum and all the issues going on there. So I thought we might talk about that, but you have other things that you wanted us to get to as well. So I'll let you guide us in terms of where you want to go. And only to say that unfortunately I will have to leave at 12:30. But other than that, you know, let me let you start us off with what you wanted us to talk about and get into a little bit. And then as time permits, we can invite questions and comments, et cetera, and so forth.
Absolutely. It's a good chunk of time. So I'm really happy to have that. Yeah, I mean, I've been public about it, but in late November, after like 5 or 6 years of dealing with incontinence, to the point where I became very isolated. And actually last year, almost at this time, or in a month, I had turned 50. So I kind of was going into 50, like, this is the year I'm gonna lose the weight, I'm gonna finish my dissertation, finally got an answer to what was going on. I had the surgery. I was released because it's interesting how certain things happen on national holidays for me, which was good. But I got released on Thanksgiving. I came home. I had my dear friend Jazz, i.e. Nomo Posse, part of BLM LA. At the beginning of BLM LA, we actually all went to trial. Together is a healer, an incredible, incredible healer. They came, and I was well taken care of, I'll say, and I have great insurance and all of that. They were like, you'll have pain, because I ended up having a full hysterectomy, because once I saw my new OBGYN, within 15 minutes, she found a mass near my cervix. So the word biopsy, and I was like, what the F? Cancer. So I had to wait for that to come back. She sent me to an ultrasound specialist, who then within minutes was like, this is the problem. Like, your uterus is prolapsed. That happens a lot after you give birth. My cervix, we were still waiting for the biopsy to come back. And then she was like, the reason you're incontinent is because with the uterus falling, then your bladder and your uterus is surrounding the bladder. So I was like, oh, I finally got an answer. And the answer was going to be, when I saw the OBGYN with the results, she's like, look, you're not going to have kids anymore. Full hysterectomy. I said, fine. Now, look, I know the nature of hysterectomies, all right, especially as it relates to elder women, in many of our families. And it's funny, the word hysterectomy, this, but comes from the word hysterical woman. So you're like, yeah. But I was finally believed, and it wasn't like up in my head. So I had the surgery, and from the day I had surgery, I haven't stopped having pain. But those first couple of weeks, I was like, this is normal. Luckily, I have my titi here every day with me. I got family. Okay. And my legs felt like they were on fire, and then at that time, they're giving you 1, 2, 3, 4 meds, 5, and at that point I was like, give me everything. I just want to be able to sleep finally. And on January 18th, Dr. King's birthday, I have a routine on him and Malcolm's birthday. I'll go in my room all day, shut it down, and listen to their speeches. So that's what I remember from that day. I was still in pain. We were specialists trying to figure it out. I go in, I start to hear Dr. King. Then the next thing was, I was in the ER, and people like, Rosa, wake up, Rosa, wake up. And I'm waking up like, where am I? What happened? And my husband was there, Justice, and my titi was there. And they were like, you had a seizure. And I was like, a seizure? And the thing is, the doctor was like, well, luckily your husband and daughter were home. And the only reason they were home was because it was MLK Day. So at that point I was like, the EKG, I still have to have a nerve test, brain MRI, neurologist, back doctor, like all of it. And at the same time, I didn't realize how much weight I lost. So in a way I was like, well, hey, I lost the weight, but I lost it so rapidly that it can affect your muscle, your heart. So they had to put me on a cardio monitor. And it's been a nightmare. And I still have many specialists to see, but I finally was diagnosed, and it's called spinal canal stenosis. It usually happens in people that are older and that are prone to arthritis. And there's really no cure for it. You can get back surgery, which may help alleviate the stress, but I also have nerve damage, so if I sit you'll see me in the interview, if I sit for too long, I'm gonna have to stand up. If I stand up for too long, I'm gonna have to sit. The main thing is my mobility has been taken away, and it's been utterly, depressing. Like, I try to walk, I fall down, my knees buckle, I try to go out to have a dinner, and I'm feeling faint of heart. And I just like, I can't believe I'm like stuck. And for me, it took so long to get the diagnosis from the neurologist, but once I got it, it put it all together. And he was also like, this is bad. And he knew. Now, I've shown these pictures to some people, but my fibroid was 5 pounds. Okay. It looks like an alien, like the movie Alien, when it comes out of the stomach. That's what it looked like, almost 5 pounds. And in 2017 is when I started saying, please remove these fibroids because, please remove these fibroids because I've known so many other sisters that have had fibroids. And, you know, it all came down to like being believed, of course, and then like take it out. So they didn't. My previous OBGYN, I'm telling my primary physician every time I'm going into her, she's giving me another pill for depression, for that, you know, and if they had listened to me, none of this would happen. You know, and the 5 pounds, imagine it's just something, I mean, anybody who's given birth, but growing, it's like growing a baby, you know? I was like, some babies come out and they're like 6 pounds. I mean, the OBGYN surgeon said she never, the like ER was like, she had never seen anything like that. Luckily, she took a picture to show it because it was, I think at that point, I was still kind of doubting myself after the surgery. Like, it wasn't bad. You know, okay, now I don't have my menstrual cycle anymore. This is great. Like, put me into menopause now so I could be happy while I'm going through it. But, you know, they're saying I may have a permanent disability because of the situation. And my mobility won't probably be as good as it ever was. And I have to make some decisions like around, do I get a scooter? Or a wheelchair. I mean, I have my cane. I hate using it. Then I realize I have to use it. And I think for me too, like when my family's not in the house and I'm here by myself, I'm very scared, very afraid because what if it happens again? You know, what if I have a seizure and nobody's here? So I think that's the most thing that, you know, that's the scary part. And also I was just thinking like, I love my role as an independent journalist. When the next Puerto Rico happens or Ferguson or whatever, I might not be the person to be right on the ground. And what that looks like for me and like transitioning. And of course, in the future, you know, there are journalists who are in wheelchairs and cover things, but you know, the way we are treated out there when we're rebelling is very different. And the police are not akin to, you know, kicking people out of a wheelchair too. Yeah.
No, obviously, I mean, it's horrible to hear all of this. And to the extent that I can understand a little bit about what you're going through, it's difficult to get a little older and to not be as confident in physical capability and being alone even.
Yeah.
You know, I don't talk about it much, but you know, one of the conditions we have in common, the spinal stenosis, and it's permanently degenerative, or it's permanent and degenerative. And at its worst, it can be a little bit frightening because when it hits and the nerves click and everything, you're incapacitated by itself. So I can't even imagine having all these other issues on top of it. So yeah, definitely, you know.
I know. And, you know, I thought about you. I thought about some other comrades with the back issue. And in fact, last week when I called the neurologist in pain, he wanted to prescribe me Lyrica. And my colleague Akuno was like, no, because I'm sure like him and you have heard about the horrible side effects of it. You know, even my titi was like, you're not taking it. I was like, yeah, once I read it. I mean, and that's the flip end of it. The good part is now being in New York where we got medical marijuana stores, right? And I had actually one day I was just like, let me just get my medical marijuana card. And I did. you know, and it's crazy what has been helping for folks that might be feeling this specific pain. And like Jared said, you don't know every step. Like one step could be good and then it hits you and you're like down for the count because it shoots right into you.
And I was talking earlier on the morning show, like when Yadi, my wife is credited for saving my life because I thought I was suffering from a back issue and was just ready to buckle down and spend a few days folded up in bed, and it turned out to be appendicitis, and I'm in there. And the doctor literally said, you have to tell your wife she saved your life because you were about to burst and be in trouble here.
Yeah.
But the point is, it felt similar to the back pain. So I didn't even know. So when I hear you starting to list all your issues, I'm like, I can understand why it's hard to diagnose. It's hard for people to understand. I certainly got versions of it where people would, doctors and the ambulance, the paramedics came to the house once, and the sister in the back was looking at me like, I don't even like I didn't even deserve to be like because I was there for my back. And I think people are used to they want to see, gunshot wounds and bones sticking out.
Yeah.
And then here you are, like, you can't see anything. You can't point to a specific spot. You just like, I can't move. I can't walk.
Yeah.
And and then with Black women, with brown women, this whole thing about you're all supposed to be superhuman and can handle everything. So therefore there's nothing really wrong. I mean, it's crazy. So and we have healthcare. Like you said.
That's the thing. You're like, but like even getting taken to the hospital, it was, people were just all over sick, but a lot of ODs. We have a lot of overdoses on fentanyl in just Albany, New York. So, it's packed. And even at one time I was telling the nurse, like, can you just give me a minute? The last time you gave me the med, I threw up. Her response was, oh, you're not listening. I'm putting that in your chart. I was like, so I literally, I'm calling somebody that's an advocate. And then I said to her, I said, what? I said, don't do that. Oh, you don't want to take it? I said, you need to leave my room. She doesn't want to take it. To all the nurses, I got up, I was dragging my foot. I go find the chief and I say, you know what? F this, get me the hospital advocate, patient advocate. People don't know every hospital has patient advocates. Their job is to be there for you. So when she came and then the OBGYN, now the OBGYN, when, she has her lanyard, young white woman, Black Lives Matter. Black women are not believed, and so from the beginning, she was like, absolutely, you were not believed. This was racial discrimination, bias. We're learning about that. I'm going to get you through this. Then the other white woman is like, write it on her chart. And I'm like, and when I was telling my titi, what's the big deal about the chart? She's like, because they're afraid that is all going to get back to them for not doing what they should have done.
Right.
The beginning, and I just say that, I don't know, I'd rather, be incontinent than this, because it's just, you never know with a seizure and all that. But with that being said, I want to just thank you and thank Kamal and thank so many people that supported, I had gigs canceled. People know that I travel for the most part. It's not that I can't travel, I can't travel by myself. I'm not allowed to drive for 6 more months because if I have the seizure, my left foot goes numb, I'm gonna kill somebody, So those options are really slim, and it's like, we're grown now. It's not like I call somebody and be like, get on the plane with me to Chicago. We're gonna have fun for 2 days. No, so, so I have to figure that kind of stuff out. And a couple people had asked, and I said, I'm going to do Jared's show. We'll talk about the beginning, but then we got other things to talk about. If anybody wants to support, you can go to my Give in Kind page. It's been so helpful. Gift cards to food and being able to be very also really begin in our household for all of us to really engage and be in a diet that's decolonized, vegan, you know, as much as possible. So people will give in kind or find me on Cash App. I think it's Black Rican 72 and Venmo is Rosa Clemente Rosa, one of those. Or you
from your website, they can get there, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, you're right. If you go to rosaclemente.net, you can see all my work. But at the beginning, you'll see the support Rosa. Just don't send any money through Zelle. They have made this process, you know, you're like bank to bank, and then there's something wrong because then like you're getting too much money. I'm like, what are you talking about? That's why you're here. But don't use Zelle.
Oh, that's deep. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the link to your website is in the show description if anybody needs it, and they can find everything else there as well. Yeah, no, I mean, it's all of this. There's been a number of folks, you know, as in our extended circles who are falling ill. You know, we're all getting a little older here, and it's tough. It's just terrible, and for the most part, I'm talking about people who have insurance.
I know,
and I don't know. I can't even imagine what, you know.
It's horrible. Like even the whole time, you know, I was like, so now I have to advocate for myself every day. I don't even have a moment to rest or recover. You know, that advocating for yourself, that's stressful in itself. But with that all being said, is like, you know, I gotta keep moving. I gotta, you know, there might be different ways I move, but I gotta keep moving.
Right on. So I'm happy to come back to any of this, and if folks in the chat want to raise questions or comments, we can probably come back to that at some point. But I did, you know, somewhat of a parallel to all of this is the precariousness that we all face here, and you know, given, you know, struggles with access to resources. Oppressive conditions still exist, and within that there is still so many other things happening, including what I saw you know, what you talk. And I see a parallel in when and again, I'm starting to think I'm later than I realized to what was sent to me recently, which your IG live about this issue. But when I hear you talking about the abuse in Black and brown communities as it pertains to hip hop, when I hear you talking about, let me just get my notes here, even hip hop culture being hijacked, women being erased, politics being erased, and a need, as you were saying, to still have to tell the truth. I actually I'm thinking about a parallel to what you were just talking about with your health issues, to historical struggles within hip hop to get artists insured with I even posted today a 2011 conference you and I were at, where we were at one point trying to advocate for an increased radical politics within all this discussion of hip hop, because so much of the discussion of hip hop, as we were identifying back then, was not fully addressing itself to the material conditions of the communities. And then almost like here we are, whether it's your conditions, other people's conditions, or the specific issue around the Hip Hop Museum in Africa Bambaataa, and all of this report that came out last month. I don't know. I mean, I'm rambling a little bit, but I see all these overlaps and parallels between these issues, and all of them are unresolved.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you wanted to talk more about or update what you had already said on your live about the crisis around the Hip Hop Museum and these, you know, I guess increasing allegations against Bambaataa and others. Yeah. Anyway, let me just stop and let you reflect on any of that, if that's, you know.
Yeah. So the Instagram live I did was based on a report I got that was published or finished and shared on February 19th. And one of my, I'm sorry. So Martha Diaz, who I to this day call the last woman standing in this space of hip hop, like in terms of the Fifth Element, culture, journalism, institution building, all of that, sent this to me. Now, look, Robert Savage, who was one of the young boys that Africa Bambaataa sexually assaulted for years, came out around 2016, maybe the 17, and it blew up, right? Like, Bambaataa is a child molester. So I remember calling my comrade DJ Cutting Candy, and I was like, "Oh, we gotta do this. We gotta write. You're in San Diego. I'm in Up. We gotta write." And I said, "You know what? Let me call Chuck D, because Chuck is in the know." And I'm talking to him, and he's like, "Yeah, this has been around for a minute." I said, "You knew?" He goes, "No, it's been around for a minute that this had happened in the past." I said, "Oh, okay." So we put out the letter, get the usual response. "You hate men, you want to bring Black men down, you hate the culture, Bambaataa is a god," like all of this kind of stuff. And that, I remember that being the moment where I also said, I'm going to transition kind of out of the hip hop speaking gig, stuff like that. Not that I'll never talk about hip hop, is that I could no longer continue to be on panels where the only thing I was asked to speak about was, why are there not more women in hip hop? I'm like, it's not that there are not more women in hip hop. You don't leave you don't, put a check card and go, "I'm locked out the culture. I'm out the culture." But we also see so much of the depoliticalization of it. But that was happening before 2016, and there's only so much women are going to take. And a lot of incredible women made some other moves because of the misogyny, the abuse, verbal and physically, around that. And then when Me Too happened, I remember texting Tarana Burke, and I was like, so I guess hip hop's going to be the only institution that Me Too skips over, because that's when the museum is being built as we speak. The ground was broken. It's being constructed. Now, being from the Bronx, and I didn't live on East 138. I lived on 174th and Soundview. But being from the Bronx, everybody knows 138th Street. And one of the housing complexes, because that's where KRS-One comes out of. And it was called the Piano District in a weird way. That street on 138, it has storage facilities for pianos that they sell, wood furniture. You got to be in New York to understand this. So that's where the museum is being built, in that part of the Bronx. For me, because I had kind of transitioned out of doing hip hop stuff, I started to hear not great things about the museum and its leadership. So I go look on the board, and I'm like, well, of course, it's Curtis Blow, who's the emeritus, the executive director, and like three people I didn't know. And then I'm beginning to realize that a lot of the pioneers who should be there have chosen not to be there for some reason. So then here comes this report. And of course, I believe everything in that report. Yeah. So
I'm just showing the members so people can see.
Yeah, we were like, see, when you look at the voting members, Ruben Diaz Jr. is no longer the Bronx Borough president. Bruce Jackson, Microsoft CEO, Mass Appeal, Peter, oh my God, the erasure and exploitation he has done. And then you look at non-voting members, which most first voting members should be at least 9 to 11 in an organization this big. But it goes on and it goes on.
And who is this, by the way? And I don't know who this is. Stephen Alexander, a theoretical cosmologist?
Never heard that. Yeah. And the other women,
Faith Newman, I don't know them.
And then Eric B. Right. I mean, just look, there's no community members. You mostly know women again in the voting part. And what's happening is there's been the Hip Hop Museum and its executive director, Rocky Boicano, have a lot of people to answer to now. And I found out a lot more stuff yesterday. And I was just like, this is the insanity of a museum that's once again helping to usher in that part of gentrification that's hard in the Bronx, because Bronx is the only borough right now that is not fully gentrified, but it's coming. I know they were pushed to develop artists housing, but not how they're going to give it, and a lot of people, the New York rental market is a lot of politics that get played. Like, people will pay thousands of dollars to get in like a home that's not had a where rent has always been the same for the most part. So it is, and the only thing that they should be doing at this point is resigning, because more and more people are finding out. On this coming Monday, the 27th, there will be a rally in front of City Hall, because the last time they were all together, and I put this picture up on my Instagram, you had Mayor Adams, Ruben Diaz Jr. You look at everybody in the back, lie to you not, it is all men, not one woman, and then Russell Simmons. So when I had seen that picture, I emailed the museum board and I said, I need my lifetime membership back right now. And talked to some people that talked to Rocky, only like he's like, I don't believe Russell did that. Just like I don't believe Bam did. And I'm like, well, then you're the problem, dude. You're being complicit. You're not listening to these boys. But who the F brings Russell Simmons, who lives in Bali, where there's no extradition agreement, because eventually he might get charged with rape. And if people saw on the record, Drew Dixon comes out with her story and some other sisters, right? So I saw it and I said, that's the day that the mayor decided to give $3 to $5 million, and you're 2 feet away from Russell Simmons, an abuser, a predator, a rapist. That's when I said, let me kind of come back in on this, at least to tell the truth about it. Like, I don't understand. In any other institution, Russell Simmons would never be here in front of them announcing this money to the museum. And I tell people too, because some people are like, oh, you just want him erased. I said, nah, dude, I'm a historian. I have a certificate in public history. Bam should definitely be in it. And this is how it should read: Bambaataa, ABCDE, but also abuse these boys. The ones that have come out publicly and the many John Does. Same thing with Russell. ABCDE, assaulted, raped multiple women. Because a museum is a requiem, not just for the good, but for the bad as well. And that's what, so I have never been a person like erase somebody because they did. I was like, oh, absolutely. Do what they do at Cooperstown. Asterisk next to Barry Bonds at A-Rod. Yes, they got all those hits, but we all know they use steroids. That's how they do it in Cooperstown. So, and Rocky Boicano just doesn't have, we need someone in there who actually knows how to run a museum and understands the community and will side with children and women when they finally tell their stories about being abused. Bambaataa was, he was indicted. He didn't show up for the beginning of the trial, and he cannot be found. So that's the latest on him. No, no one knows exactly where.
So when that report is talking about and showing the Instagram posts he's making, it's not identifying. He's just posting from some anonymous. Maybe he's in Bali with Russell. Is that
maybe someone's posting for him? Look, it's not. People should never underestimate Bambaataa and Universal Zulu Nation. How many events did I go to back in the day, for Bambaataa Zulu Nation, a lot at the National Black Theater in Harlem. But Yeah, and for me, it's just like, come on, man, you're like 53. Let's stop. Like, how you still clapping for this dude? It literally makes no sense to me until then I say, well, maybe those dudes do the same thing and they just haven't been caught yet. But I mean, we're talking about what's supposed to be the premier museum for hip hop. Now, with that being said, there's other hip hop museums. You got Alan Kent with the Graffiti Museum in Miami, Clyde Valentine doing incredible work in museums and in Dallas. Brother Omar Eaton Martinez from DC is doing something with African American museums, right? So it's not that there should be one hip hop museum, but this is the largest, right? And you're talking millions of dollars, not only public funds, but also private funds. So we need to get someone in there who knows how to actually run a museum. Somebody last night from Zulu Nation DMs me to be like, we know where you live. I'm like, all right, dude, like what? I don't know. Where are you going to drive from? I mean, but back, the thing with the Zulu Nation is that they're ride or die for Bam, and Bam's not the only one. Crazy Legs, people have accused him of horrible things. Somehow he's made a comeback, which I find super distressing online, but Crazy Legs was one of the people that has been cited as getting pop locking breaking into the Olympics. But he was removed once the people began to be able to tell their story, and it was sad because you think Crazy Legs, Puerto Rican, African Bambaataa, African American. You look at the creation of this culture from literally burning from the Bronx. I mean, I was born April 1972. I was born. I wasn't at the first hip hop show, but I spent years with my cousins taking me. So for me, hip hop is a part of my life, but if it is not doing what it should be doing, and it's still filled with so many men who are problematic, yeah, and threats, yes. I think for me too, why I'm like, all right, yeah, come and see me is when I ran for vice president, every day was somebody was running up on me, telling me I was wrong. But I've been around a lot of these men enough to know that they might talk that game, but at the end, that's all it is. Now, if that's what Universal Zulu Nation is going to have to come to an understanding of who they are. Because if you're still clapping for Bambaataa, then to me, that's like a cult mentality, right? Yeah.
It also, I think, by the way, I think there should be some self-reflection to the extent that members of the Zulu Nation are threatening you with this whole thing of I don't know how to put it any better, but what is tough about threatening Rosa? What makes you a thoroughbred to go after Rosa? If there's so many, if you built like that to be making threats, like go get, there's real targets to deal with. There's like real people that are causing problems in the world that you could address yourself to. You could organize more. You could get better politically educated, toughen up that way instead of threatening.
Oh, sorry.
Rosa. No, I'm just saying. No, go ahead. Yeah. That's it.
Look, these kind of threats are not new to women in the culture.
Yeah.
I mean, especially when, in the early 2000s when clubs were still open, like events every day, everywhere, and you see someone like a Joan Morgan, who, for me, that should be the sex element of the culture, hip hop feminism, to, see Carlito Rodriguez and Mimi Valdez and Bakari Kitwana when they were all editors at the Source, to abide the incredible work of Dream Hampton, Asha Bandelli, Mumu Fresh, Jean Grey. I mean, Invincible, Cutting Candy, the Anomalies. I could sit here for days naming the amount of women, and there's not one of those women that at one time some dude, some group approached them. I didn't like the critique in the Village Voice, punch you in your face. You wrote that about me, punch you in the face. I mean, I know a sister got thrown down the steps by a very, quote, revolutionary rapper that is still around, okay? So the flip side of all this for me, though, and processing everything is that I am checking myself as a woman, because there were many times where I was on a stage or backstage. And because of the nature of my relationship with these different type of men, they were never going to roll up on me and say anything crazy to me or approach me about anything. But I do remember there were times where I'd be like, oh, I'm the only woman here. You know, my ego, love it, I'm on the stage. And now I got to process and go, oh my God, how many women were there that ended up going backstage and things went bad? How many women here want to love the culture but have to deal with misogyny and sexism? But, you know, much like white supremacy and capitalism, patriarchy can be carried out by women as well. Now, I know for a fact I didn't carry it out. I didn't bring someone to someone's room. I didn't go to the strip club. I'm just saying, a lot of revolutionary rappers on the outside, really not on the inside, you know.
So you said a couple of things in that Instagram live that were pretty compelling and provocative. You got your Nas on and said the culture is dead. You said you talked about again the erasure of women and the erasure specifically even of the women who put together the hip hop political convention. I don't think I read Jeff Chang's Freedom Moves. You mentioned that and what it doesn't do. But I don't think I've seen that.
I keep it right here to show everybody, because I read this book. It's not just Jeff Chang, it's Sammy Alim and Casey Phillip Wong. Now look, these brothers have done a lot for the culture, especially in academics kind of spaces. My problem with this is, how do you leave out Martha Diaz? How do you leave out the convention, or it's 2 lines? And how do you leave out me, you, Jared?
No, I definitely. Don't put me on that list. But you will for sure. I don't.
Black August itself should be a whole chapter. You know, and for me, a lot of the talk happening is like people are not also understanding that we did Black August for 15 years. The fruits of our labor are happening in the last 4 years, i.e., the political prisoners that are finally coming out. What Black August did was every year when we had that event, it politicized, especially younger people. Some joined organizations, and those that do work around freedom for the political prisoners and prisoners of prisoners of war, POWs, right? Is that these were 30, 40-year movements. But we got some RPPs out. Unfortunately, Mutulu Shakur is finally out. He's very sick. Sundiata is out. Herman Bell got out. David Gilbert released. Our last Puerto Rican political prisoner released. Some of the Move family released. You know, and it took decades of us doing that work and then exposing, I would say 100,000 people, if not more, around Black August as a project of hip hop and political prisoners through the Malcolm X grassroots movement. So I want to see more of those stories in this 50-year remembrance. But what I'm seeing is mostly all male journalists, you know, in the mainstream, like MSNBC, CNN, are doing all these 8, 10, 12 episodes. And, you know, again, some of them regulate the women to the episode on women. I'm like, why don't you put all the men on this and we'll go to the economics and capitalism and land? Or why don't you just stop? I mean, for me, it's like, why is there still a problem? It's unbelievable. And it also makes me make the connection, like how there's still, how is there any PWIs? How's there any, you know, predominantly white institution in a country where we're becoming the majority? So I kind of parallel to, you know, hip hop is still here for a reason. Like cultures don't die. Young people create new things that speak to them. But to leave out a history where we can say we won. We can't always claim that we're winning. We usually don't win. You know, and it came for me when I saw Jalil last year, but Jalil Muntiken. But Jalil was at my house a couple weeks ago, and the whole time I'm like, oh my God, Jalil Muntiken's in my house. Like, you know, just Elise, I'm like, oh my God, like he's in my house. Because Jalil is one of the PPs that came out strong. Like, the brother's tall, strong physically, no health issues. He got COVID and survived. And then the Attorney General, Letitia James, did not let him get released on the day he was supposed to be released. She put in a special request. She's never done that. No AG would have done that. She did. And that showed the power, particularly of Jalil. But when he came out, I was like, go on vacation. He's like, vacation? Ain't no vacation for revolutionaries. I was like, right. So I want more of that history to be told and uplifted. And I definitely don't want like Donna Lisa Fisher to be erased as one of, she was in the founding of the convention before I was, you know, then eventually Bakari Kitsawan and her asked me to join. And I did.
So as I told you in our private group chat, that was my biggest problem with that PBS series. That I thought it did the same thing. I was really bothered that so much of your work in particular was not included and I like really I feel like our whole generation just got skipped over. But particularly I think there's a real problem, not just with that series, but in just as you're talking about in general, with leaving out this history. Anyway, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that for those of us who've done these, you know, they film you for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but when I left, I knew. Because every time, even if it wasn't related, I'd be like, so sexism and misogyny. So KRS-One, you know, like,
oh, yo, I forgot about that part. You in your
like,
IG, you pointed out he's still supporting Bambaataa.
Yes,
or not.
I know. Well, they asked me in that part of the interview, they said, oh, KRS-One said that voting doesn't work. And I was like, of course it doesn't. I agree with him on that. And they were like, what? And then I was like, there's other problems. You know, but every time, and I could see in their faces, they were like, bring it back. And I would be like, again, like this happened to so-and-so, or like, did you ever hear about hip hop feminism? Joan Morgan wrote a whole book about it, you know. And it's also, you know, I was just like, I'll be in there for like 2 to 3 minutes.
But that was, I mean, that was exactly what I was bothered by, that not only the time issue, but like they could have, like they didn't have to do it. Like it wouldn't have to be done. Like they could have just simply asked what happened with the hip hop convention. They didn't have to, it didn't even have to be couched as a specific question for you to talk about the mistreatment.
They asked me that. That's the whole point. I probably spoke.
Well, they did ask you about that.
They did. A lot of stuff obviously was edited out. Yeah, for me, that was the main thing. I was like, you know, I want to talk about the hip hop political convention and Black August as these living, moving, breathing institutions and the work we did before social media. But, you know, like I said, I was there for 6 hours. I don't watch myself ever. Like I look at myself once. Everybody else has been telling me, you know, and I think the rest of the hip hop programming that's happening this year seems to be doing the same things that it did. And no, not the same things that it did, because at least with the convention, with Black August, again, we can see some wins, but we can talk about our generation being very clear that our agenda is the agenda of Black freedom and what that means and what that looks like. You know, and then we're also very aware how hip hop has been co-opted, not just by industry, by the academy. Like, can I see a sister get a hip hop position? Is the white boys the only ones you're finding to be the New York Times editor for hip hop? He's the only one y'all could find? Come on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't even know about that, but that's deep. That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about that last part. But yeah. Well, and that's interesting you said that, because that was actually one of the things that also bothered me about not only that series, but a number of different pieces in this 50th anniversary thing, that it's not just that they didn't acknowledge hip hop scholarship at all.
At all. Yeah.
So like all of the different forms and arguments and all the great work and some of the bad work, I mean, they could have done all kinds of stuff. They didn't. So like all of that got left out. The convention got left out. The activism gets left out. They don't even, that phrase, you know, speaking of which, Bakari, did he ever come out with that book, the hip hop activism book? Did that ever, I don't even think that, did he,
no,
whatever
no,
happened with that?
That didn't come out, but he's working on, I think I could, yeah, he's working on Nipsey's bio. He did the Rakim one, what, 3 years ago, which I loved.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't see that.
Yeah, biography, I think right at the moment. But no, the book on that we've been interviewing and stuff on activism didn't come out. Knowing Bakari will eventually come out, you know. But also, you know, the problem too is like, these just can't be, you know, you can't put it all on just like in a book. We have to find other ways to, you know, show this history. But, you know, we're into the 50th year, and it seems like everything's pretty much solidified on where, what, and all these events happening all over the country, you know. So some are going to be amazing, some won't, some will be critiqued, some will be won't be critiqued. I wish that also for those of us who ran for office at any time, but you know, like even the Ras Baraka becoming mayor, I mean, that does come out of the hip hop convention. There's a reason we did it in Newark. We always knew.
And the Howard University, I know my Howard folks would not be would be upset if I don't mention that Howard University conference. That first
ever. That was Raz, April Silver. Kamal was there, right? Kamal.
No, I don't think Kamal. Timothy Jones was involved. Like I can't remember everybody.
Kevin Powell.
I'm sure. Yeah.
So yeah, that was left out, and also after that, the convening that Brother David Muhammad had in Wisconsin, because I pinpoint that as the moment where it was like, this is what it could be like. And this is where I met someone like Rachel Ramus, who had a documentary. This is 2001 on 2000 on Nobody Knows My Name, the erasure of women in hip hop, 23 years ago, right? I do remember that conference, like bam, Fable, like it was packed. It was beautiful. You know, Howard was more radical in what they did, and just these like beginning stepping stones. You know, there's no way you can't say we did influence some things, but unfortunately, once Obama, you know, put his hat into the ring, everybody, for the most part, folks lost their mind. You know, I'm like, you never voted before, but today you're clapping for Obama. Okay, we had this convention you know, we had the idea at the convention, and what I meant to say about Raz is Raz had made it clear that he was going to run, and we were like, well, let's have the convention here, and he is the mayor and continues to be the mayor. He is critiqued as he should be. But I think we've kind of glossed over what his mayorship has looked like, because there's been significant things he has done, you know, and there's been critiques on him. But the thing is that was definitely like a goal. We were like, when Raz wants to, we got you, and you're going to run and win.
Right on.
Yeah.
Yeah, Minister Server was there rocking at everything, supporting everything, right on. And yeah, this is another good point, that the PBS and a lot of these folks leave out all that conscious hip hop, all the 5% nation, all the reference to Islam at all. In terms
That's
of
the first time Justice critiqued me. Justice. He comes out of the nation of gods and earths, you know.
Welcome out and out.
Yeah. And one time he's like, why do you never talk about the nation of gods? I'm like, okay. I'm like, you know, but I know, I mean, there's no way, especially if you're living in New York and you walk in those streets of Harlem at that time in Brooklyn, right? Like the Nation of Gods and the Earth were powerful, and what they were bringing a message to particularly Black men. We also had the Hebrew Israelites who'd be like, sister, you know, you Black. And I'd be like, I do know that. They're like, all right, sister over there, you know, like it was energy, you know, like you're walking down these streets and you see the culture, this people on corn, like the energy. But of course, that's pre-Brooklyn and Harlem gentrification.
Right.
But the moment I was like, I'm glad we grew up when we did. No social media. We had to know somebody. We had to get info on somebody. You know, our social media was fax machines. Malcolm X Grassroots never went and became a nonprofit. To this day, we're not a nonprofit. I say we as that being my political home. I'm not a current organizer. There's chapters. You know, I love what they are doing. These younger folks. You know, but it's hard in this time with all of this technology to have really good conversations, and it be dwindled down to like 20-second sound bites, or the constant bombardment of misinformation from mainstream media, and even some progressive media who continues to lose its mind over Russia, Biden, and all of that stuff.
Yeah. Hey, listen, so folks, we got about 30 minutes left. If you want any particular comments or questions for Rosa, please drop it. But it just occurred to me, you, because we haven't had a chance to talk about this, you knew John Bracey before he passed. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. You want to say a word or two about him? Because I mean, he was, yeah, man, anyway.
Anybody who spent any time with Bracey would spend 2 years in my dissertation. What up, Hiram? Hiram, proud to call you our brother and comrade. Every time I think I'm revolutionary, I'll read something from Hiram and be like, oh my God.
No, Hiram be shaming folks.
I know.
Hiram is rough with it too. Some of these text messages come in pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck was you doing?
Love it. Thank God. But you know, he passed away suddenly. I mean, for us, we knew that Dr. Turner had been sick, and a lot of us were able to see him. Me and Jared and some others were able to go and see his homecoming. But you know, then Bracey, you know, he went to the doctor, and then 6 weeks later, he was gone. So everyone was shocked. Everyone's still shocked at UMass Amherst. You know, you always think, oh man, I should have called one more time. But, you know, losing Bracey and Dr. Turner, I mean, Bracey comes out of Detroit labor movement. I mean, what's about revolutionary? And that he said, I'm going to build a department here, and we're going to have the first PhD program. You know, because UMass Amherst had the first PhD program in Black Studies. That's where I'm getting my dissertation from. What it made me think about is a lot of the giants in Black Studies are dying. And then the attack on Black and ethnic studies in general, with every academic institution who's like, we will cut Black people and gender sexuality before we go after history, English, or anything else. You know, and if we it made me, honestly, when Bracey passed, and I took a couple days with it, I was like, okay, I need to be back in the academy at some level, in some function. And a lot of it is also, I want to be around younger people. I sometimes just can't deal with the pessimism and the nothing's right and never going to happen. I can't, you know, and I feel like younger people have to feel like it's fun in a way, right? Like organizing is hard, but it's fun. Organizing could mean this, but you win. You know, organizing is what our elders wanted us to do. So with Bracey and Turner passing, I think for me, I have a responsibility for who they raised me, because it was Dr. Gordon, then Dr. Turner at Cornell, and then Dr. Bracey. So in all of my Africana, from my undergrad to my master's, to my PhD, I was taught by literally the same people who created Black Studies in the Academy, but created the National Council of Black Studies. So I was like, you know, I need to get myself somewhere in there somehow, so I can now talk to younger people, especially around Afro-Latino Black identity, because as that's become very explosive, it's now very branded, and Blackness as the politic is being, you know, ushered out by younger folks. Love the younger folks who know their identity, but that's just the beginning. And it's very weird how the Afro-Black stuff has been all of a sudden like, yes. And I'm like, because capitalism. They're like, oh, wait, there might be some of y'all that are Black that speak Spanish. Let's figure out how to market to y'all. Yeah, you know how that goes.
Yeah, unfortunately. By the way, you know, what do you see in terms of the racial landscape these days? Are you finding it? Because I feel like, well, at least in my classrooms, I feel like we're experiencing a sea change with definitions and with attempts at causing disunity. I'm feeling like I feel like there are renewed attempts at adjusting the one drop rule to mimic more of Latin America's version, where one drop of whiteness makes you white as opposed to Black here. I feel like there's attempts at that are happening. So as someone who has been sort of, for our generation, a pioneer in advocating advanced and radicalized notions of race, are you seeing anything different in your work, in your areas of focus, or maybe I'm just, you know, narrowly focused on my own stuff?
Oh no, I mean, it is bad even just trying to talk to not just younger people. No, I don't think the racial landscape has changed. I definitely think, though, it's become more violent, you know, and outwardly violent. I think younger folks are getting caught up in language too much and not asking, like, who even created this term? Like, where does it come from? How do the people respond? Because if we just look at the word Latinx, right? They've done already 3 polls, and less than 10%, and I'm upping that probably, but less than 10% of quote Latinx people use it. So I know why the X is there. I get it. Spanish language is gendered: A, Latina; O, Latino, man, woman. There hasn't been a word for non-binary people. There hasn't been a gender term for non-binary people. So the X did that. And it comes out at the Academy, and that's fine. But at the end of the day, you can't be rolling up on people like, oh, you Latinx? No, I'm from Mexico. I am not from DR. I'm from Puerto Rico. I'm not from Puerto Rico. I'm from DR. I'm not from Panama. You know, and so much of the Afro-Black LLL, I try to, because if not somebody, I'm supposed to add an E. Look, I said the other day, I said, I'm a Black-Puerto Rican. Don't call me anything else. Y'all are confused as F. And who's giving you these terms? And what does it matter that we have a term if we have no political power? Like, you know, and I took it a little personally the last couple months, because I have had some younger people in that kind of circle come at me. And I'm like, not on this, y'all. You can't touch me on this. Like, I've been calling myself a Black Puerto Rican since 2001 when I joined the Malcolm X grassroots movement, okay? I don't mind if somebody's like, oh, you're an Afro-Latina, Black. I don't mind, whatever. What I do mind is all of a sudden people coming at me because of my skin color. And I'm like, oh, we're not going back to this time. And I had to tell them, they told me, you're light skinned and you take up too much space. Okay, what if I told you my mother was African American, my father was white, and I was biracial? Well, that's different. How is that different? It is not. You're focusing on phenotype. Okay, so Clarence Thomas is good for you, but Richie Perez isn't? Come on. Like, whatever, Nikki Haley, that's good for you, but Rosa Clemente is not. That it's conflating colorism, then racism, ethnicity, and white supremacy. And Yaba's my dear friend. You know, so when Yaba did One Drop, people also distilled her book to just colorism. But we'll be on the call and I'll be like, they want to talk about colorism. Yeah, but if you want that panel, because I don't deal with colorism in that way. What the work I'm doing that is also different than a lot of Afro Black academics and all of that is that I'm studying within the United States. Do you know the amount of people that are studying Colombia, DR, Cuba, Panama, Mexico, Costa Rica, Belize? It's a lot of scholars in the best of ways, but there's no scholar that is studying the hip hop generation as a tool, the hip hop identity as a tool that allow particularly Puerto Ricans to begin to say they're African descendant people. They're Black. They're not just Puerto Rican. So I study within.
That is deep, Rosa. I'm sorry to cut you off because
no, that's it. It took me a minute to get there.
No, but my point is that my problem with historically with use of hip hop as an identity was that I always took it as an attempt to erase the Blackness from it. So to hear you talk about it as a doorway for Latinos to find their Blackness is kind of deep. So that's what I'm saying. It's like I very much, yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, look, because Raquel, to this day, it is, where is it? I'm finding this book. Oh, New Yorkers from the Hip Hop Zone. I tell you, to this day, this is the only work that not on New Yorker, but particularly New Yorkers, Puerto Ricans, right? Raquel Rivera wrote this in 2003, 20 years later. And in it, she's talking about New Yorkers. She's talking about like, obviously Fat Joe, Big Pun, remembering Big Pun and all of that, and simply the way I look at it too is there were a lot, obviously Boricuas are co-creators of the culture of hip hop, but a lot, one thing can bring along a lot of people. And to this day, I distill, Big Pun, because when Big Pun did 100% capital punishment, the line to this day that any Boricua knows is when Big Pun says, Boricua, Morena. Now, you talk to some of these younger people, they're like, when you call me Morena or Moreno, you're anti-Black. No, dude, that's not how it works in the Latino. I'm going to tell people, at least in the Boricua community, this is how it works. Boricua Morena, yes. I might be light skinned or I might not believe I'm Black or African. Yes. Also, Big Pun and Fat Joe, they're coming out. They're not rhyming in Spanish. They're rhyming in English. That's why they were never given the big deals, right? Because the industry were like, they're Puerto Ricans and they speak English. They're Puerto Ricans and never been to the island. Yes. But here is the influence of African and indigenous culture, but African culture. So when to this day you'll hear everybody Boricua, Morena, and I had to tell them this when the stuff happened also around Negrita, Negrito. There's a way you say it, okay? Morena, mi nieta, you're so beautiful. ¿Quién está esa morena aquí? ¿Qué está? What they doing? See, it's different. Negrita, Pedro Priti said, Aquí negrita means love. So even when, I had done this thing around J-Lo, I can't remember, and they were like, negrita is like the N-word. I said, okay, if you believe that, let's look at the N-word. And I mean, not the whole history, but it's the same thing with mostly brothers. Yo, why you do that, right? So, and of course, white people can never say it. Like, we're not going to have a discussion. You're not allowed to, period. Like, you say those words, they all anti-Black to me. But that one song 21 years later resonates because no one else has made a song that speaks to Boricua Morena.
You also had that line, with a twist of Black and I'm proud.
Right, with a twist of Black and I'm proud, you know, and it's
like
and that is the nature of how particularly African American Puerto Ricans came up together in the Bronx, you know, and it's also important that people understand that in this Latin American geopolitic, Puerto Rico does not fit. We're a colony of the United States. Our closest people are African Americans in terms of here we have American citizenship, but treated second and third citizenship. All other Latinos can say, you know, my country is free. Is it really free? That's fine. But what I'm saying is that we have a colonial condition, just like African Americans in this country have a colonial condition. And that's why the culture is created with us and obviously Jamaicans. But to this day, we see this explosion, but it's becoming very deracialized. And I'm like, if you're talking about Blackness and you don't rock Blackness as the call, as the freedom, as, you know, the international, transnational, but, you know, that saying, when all Black people are free, everyone will be free. I'm not rocking with you because you're Afro-Black and might be dark or have your fro. I need to know, are you voting for Trump or not? You want Puerto Rico to be a state? You Black as darker than my dad? Absolutely not. You are not a friend. You're an enemy. No.
So, just to get to a couple questions that are coming in, Minister Server is asking, what are some ways people can help the future generation become more political in hip hop culture? Oof.
Well, you know what? I think we need the future generation to become political about anything because they on Twitter and TikTok, they get their news from TikTok. I had to tell my daughter, I was like, huh? That's not a news site. You know, and we're already seeing how technology is going to be skewed, algorithms, who gets shut down and all of that. So I think the battle right now is also young people do have something in common politically, and that's climate catastrophe. And you cannot have a conversation with any young person where they are not afraid and they have every right to blame all the previous generations. So the starting point for this new generation is the intersection of climate catastrophe and then supporting lands, farms, and cooperative economics in this country, in the pockets, whether it's Jackson, Mississippi, or Troy, New York with Soul Fire Farm, you know, and so many other organizations that are reimagining, but also being very clear that as this climate catastrophe continues, how are we going to be able to take care of ourselves and what community we're in?
Right on. Shout out to Leah Boggs. When did Latin become synonymous with Spanish? I learned that Latin languages included Latin, Italian, French, and Spanish. Granted, it was from my Catholic school upbringing, but when did that happen?
Yeah, because I went to Catholic school, you know, too. So, look, you know, it's a colonizer's language. So I was never one to be like Spanish is the barometer. Speaking Spanish is the barometer that makes you Latin. And I don't refer to myself as Latin. The only, you know, look, no, I mean within the Latin, yeah. Why how Spanish people speak? Oh, why how is Spanish speaking people Latin speaking or Latinx? Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, Leah, like you're hitting it just by the question, like who created these terms? You know, what do they mean? You know, when I was growing up, because I never dated a Boricua, I dated all African-American men. But when I would, you know, go meet their families, they'd be like, oh, you that Spanish girl. And I was like, yeah, of course, because I see Spanish. That was my identity, being Spanish in Puerto Rico until I went to college and learned the truth. And then was like, oh, it's just another colonizer's language. But in the larger Latino kind of elite class, they use that term all the time. And they use speaking Spanish as a barometer of how Latino you are. I went through that as an undergrad at SUNY Albany. When I wanted to join organizations, I joined the biggest Latino at that time. I think they were still using the word Hispanic, so Fuerza Latina, ASUBA, the Black Alliance, I went to the meeting for Rosa Latina. They were talking in Spanish. I went up to them after and I said, I get it, but there's people in here who might not speak it, who are, quote, Hispanic or Latino. And they were like, not in this organization. I go to Suba and I'm completely like, got brothers and sisters, like, you Black girl. I was like, when? You from Africa? I was like, no, I'm not. And they're like, take a class. And I did. That's how I became who I am, was that one meeting and in an intersection of meeting Dr. Maita Moreno Vega, who is the G, the queen, everything Afro Black, everything. I mean, I've been telling Martha she gotta come on this show because I
thought we were close once.
Yeah.
Whenever
I'm gonna make it happen. But no, you're right. Like, I don't. And lastly, young folks, like, there's no land called Latin. Is there a land called Latinx? It's just so depoliticizing and so deracialization, that I'm like, this ain't the space for me at all, But
in my limited circles, everybody uses, they still use Hispanic. They still use and will only, what I like is that they don't say Spanish unless they're talking about people from Spain and they don't want to be identified with it.
Right.
So they're at least clear on that. They're like, we're not Spain.
Yeah. I mean,
and that's why they want to be called Latin American.
Right.
Because they don't want to be identified with Spain. But then they'll still use Hispanic. And I'm like, anyway. Very, very interesting and very important. And I'm just looking at some of the comments. It's depending on who's defining it.
And it's geographical. If you go to Texas, that's all they use. Hispanic. You go to Florida, they are definitely not using their homelands, especially as it relates to Venezuela. So the Latin comes the term, catch-all term, and then in the media and the AP and all that, they still use the word Hispanic, which means descendant of Spain, which means if you're using that as a Latino, you are embracing your rapist and your colonizer, and you might want to rethink that.
Hold up. I'm late, but hold up.
Message.
Yeah. And then just real quick, Zenzabel, thank you for the super chat. I remember those days when I took some classes at SUNY Albany. I was Tanya Bell back in the day. Peace to Rosa.
Let me tell you that those years at SUNY Albany, we had the whole administration was Black, from the president to the VP, resident director. But we also had 5 full African-American tenured women professors. So when you took Black studies, you were taking all those classes. Dr. Gordon, who passed, Professor Colia Clark, who just passed, Professor Lois Owens. Professor Lois Owens was doing work around the prison industrial complex in the early 80s as a scholar. Never heard that term. So there was, going to SUNY Albany was like, it's a utopia. Yes, the majority of the students are white, but we were so strong with each other, and we filled our classes. We filled Black studies. I mean, at one point we expanded and got 7 full tenure lines in the early 90s. But I was seeing the connection to that, Jared, is the golden age of hip hop, the diversity of the music, because everybody always talks about the younger generations about bling and all that. Look, from the first hip hop song to a couple other brothers, that's how you found out. You go to Delancey Street to get your fake Coach, so there was this materialistic thing, but it was diverse. And also then we're coming off the heel, we're coming into college in those early 90s, right into the debates around Afrocentricity. And those things, I think, if we embrace them, were life-changing for any of us at that time period.
No, absolutely. I mean, I still remember, I don't know how tours work anymore, or if you can even tour at all anymore with the whole Live Nation and all that kind of non-Ticketmaster stuff. But I mean, I remember at one show, in one show, we saw Heavy D, Big Daddy Kane, Public Enemy,
keep going.
No, I'm just saying, like, you get this. I'm talking about the range you would get, like the diversity. I can't even remember now, but all in one show. So it was like Will Smith was on tours, you know, the Fresh Prince was on dates with Public Enemy. So you had like this whole range of a variety that I don't know that is possible to see anymore.
No, you know what, that I went to that tour, and because I'm a hoarder as an archive.
Oh wow. Oh
it's
wow.
Somewhere in here.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it was no, that was Maxwell. Well, anyway, I remember that tour because it was at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
It was Stetson, maybe would have been different, but it was Stetsasonic, Heavy D, Diggable Planets.
Oh wow, right.
Oh, right. That's the first time I saw Eric B. and Rakim. Salt and Pepper.
I definitely didn't see that.
Yeah, but the amount of,
I got you. Right, that's right.
Yeah.
They were all toured together. Yeah.
It's incredible, you know? Yeah.
So Lick, in the last few minutes, was there anything else you wanted to touch on or come back to? Well, you know, obviously you're always welcome back here. You're the link to your website's in the show description. I don't know. I just want to say again, you know, while we're here, like I am really shocked. Even I have to admit, I'm shocked and a little bit bothered, a lot bothered at this issue of the erasure, and to see. I gotta say, I said it to you in that chat, but it was so crystallized to see you in that PBS documentary for just those few minutes, and like you were one of the main reasons I became active at one point. So to not see any reference to that, and to feel like all of that history, not just in that one series, but in general, is being ignored or written out or suppressed is really frustrating, because a lot of what you and others, and myself to a lesser extent, were trying to fight for obviously is still a problem, and obviously hasn't still been solved. And and maybe it's just my own midlife crisis thing, but it's like when I came back and went to college after being in the military and took a history class and saw that Desert Storm was in the history book. And it was like the first time I was like, damn, shit I did was actually this isn't Vietnam or World War II. It was like the war I got sent to. But then to not see that happen, like a version of that should be happening now in terms of a reflection of hip hop, where I would read about my peers in my generation, get their full credit for work that you and many others were trying to do. Like all that stuff around corporate consolidation, media consolidation, the Smack Fest stuff, the payola stuff. I mean, all of those. I mean, anyway, so I just wanted to raise that up and you know, give you your flowers real quick on that point in particular. And that was it. That's it. That was it.
I appreciate that, you know, and I also, for me, like DJ Cutting Candy has been a complete inspiration to me all the time. I mean, she is one of the most astute, politically minded sisters I've ever known, and engaging her Filipino culture, but what she did for women as DJs, you know, what the Anomalies did, what Jean Grey does, what, you know, I've been watching Medusa every day. I'm like, how the hell is she ain't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's Medusa. Like, you talking about a queen. You know, I feel some way, you know, the same way about certain men. I think Talib has shown his activism. I mean, he is controversial. People always say that. I'm like, you know, yes, but Talib literally did every Black August, every single one, right? You know, so I'm reading things where Talib's not mentioned either. I'm reading things where, you know, you may push back, but anybody that's engaged in the culture, I think should be somewhat represented. With that being said, we can represent ourselves on this social media, but I remember when Richie Perez was really, really sick, and he said to one of the younger sisters, go get that book, and opened it up, and it said, the Justice Committee, and this was what Richie created before he passed away, to make sure that the families, because Richie's the person that said, we can't do this work if the families are not involved. And he had to teach us, you might not like what the families want to do, but from the beginning, you with the families, and then you begin to carve out, we're going to do this. Y'all as the families do this. We got your back. It was Richie and the Justice Committee that started that, because we would never see the families of police brutality ever. And a lot of the mothers are still here with us, a lot of the fathers. So, as Lupe said, they definitely dumbed it down, and there's no way they're going to put my run, the work a lot of us did. It's too, I guess they consider it to be so revolutionary to this day. What I say, is hip hop dead? No, cultures don't die. Young people create new things. But I'm definitely a person that's not going to allow anyone to be erased if I have a voice. And it's not about me. I can handle that. Again, I'm a historian. My memoir will be out. All the stories will be told. I don't want all the other women. I don't want all the other men. I don't want any non-binary folk to participate in the culture, and who they are is disrespected. How they roll is disrespected in terms of gender, their ethnicity, race, and all of that. So I'm always happy to come back on and hi. I didn't have to stand up during this interview, but yeah, I wrote my so this is this would be the Puerto Rican flag. The navy blue all y'all using, the real Puerto Rican flag would have this blue. There's a reason why you don't, in real houses, you don't see the navy. That's the ones that are made in China and just blue. But this represents the island of Puerto Rico, and the machete is right there. This is really showing particularly African-American and Boricua kind of RBG, Puerto Rican, independistas, nationalist stuff. And, Puerto Rico right now is having a real dope renaissance. I mean, some of these young people coming out right now, creating studios, art spaces. There's a lot of African Americans coming to Puerto Rico that want to know more about where are the Africans in Puerto Rico. They're in Luisa, yes, but throughout the island, the African influences. But, I did see the sea change happening. I saw a sea change happening after we covered Hurricane Maria. And that was, it changed the political consciousness of a nation in this disaster. Because before Maria had happened, especially a lot of elders would be like, we're never going to be free. And if we get free, how are we going to eat? How are we going to fix? How are we going to do this? What it showed was that all we got from the government was paper towels being thrown at us. So you could see the consciousness shifting. And then a year later, I'm on the ground. Here you got Bad Bunny calling for a protest, 1.5 million. That's more than 60% of the island that day went and stayed there for days to get rid of Jose Joe. Now, with all this happening, there are also people, I'm going to use my girl Yasmin Hernandez from Cornell's work. She calls it rematriating back to Puerto Rico. And I've had several friends who have picked up and we're going to fight, because they could see the consciousness is changing. They're also breaking what is always wedged between us and Puerto Ricans in the diaspora. Oh, you're from New York, you don't belong in Puerto Rico. You from the island, you don't belong in New York. The diaspora is coming together politically, and a lot of people are also trying to make sure that our land is not grabbed up for dollars, pennies on the dollar. So something very beautiful is happening in Puerto Rico, and it's happening now, and it's continual. And one of the last point I'll make is that this is also movements being run by feminists, Afro-Boricua feminists, but also Afro-Boricua LGBTQIA people. And It's incredible. I encourage everyone who's an activist or an organizer, go to Puerto Rico. Yes, go to the beach and all that. But the organizations, institutions, art studios, open mics, it's like an entire renaissance. And one of the he's not former, he's still with us, Panama Vicente Aiba, a young lord who now lives in Puerto Rico, he has said to me during Hurricane Maria in the video we made, people can check it out on pronthemap.com. He said, we need to be free to get back into the international community and be part of an international community of radical revolutionary countries and states until people get rid of that decolonized mind. So this is why I always say, decolonizing land, decolonizing food, but also you have to decolonize your mind. And that's what's been happening in Puerto Rico post Maria.
Rosa, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much. Thanks, Rich L. Dios, who says you were integral to who he has become today. Thank you very much for the super chat. And if we can, I just want to close with where we sort of were earlier, not exactly at the beginning, but just to come back very quickly. Real quick, Cape Capri is pictured in this report about the Zulu Nation. Is he not behaving appropriately in response to these allegations? Are they saying that he's run afoul of in other words, when he's pictured here?
Yeah. So
what is being said here?
Well, look what's in the background.
Right. I'm sorry. Right. Okay. There's still, okay. That's what the point is. Okay. Because his name wasn't mentioned in the report. So, but
Red Alert is in it too. Right.
Alert, right. Okay. I got you. Okay.
Like KRS-One, these are the men who
right.
Refuse to believe and see the truth.
Yeah. Anyway, so as this report concludes, and all of this is linked, including Rosa's website, at 50 years old, perhaps it is time for hip hop to grow up and join the rest of society in instituting no tolerance measures for sexual abuse and giving pedophiles, rapists, and their enablers no place to hide and prosper in corporate silence. Yeah. We look forward to a swift resolution. Toward that end, Rosa always helping us move towards swift, if not swift, powerful resolutions. I appreciate you coming through. You're always welcome to come back. Speedy recovery and love to Just and Alicia and the whole family. And it's always good to catch back up with you. I look forward to doing it again.
Love to y'all. Same to the family. Look at our daughters, incredible young women we've been able, and the movement has been able to raise. And you got to come out here to see Soulfire Farm.
I do.
I'm it out there. I told Khalid, Baba Jalil, some other people, it's 35 minutes from here. And the work that has happened on Soulfire from when they beginning to now is probably the greatest thing I have seen inside this country. It is.
Wow. All right.
Yeah. And plus,
you're making plans now.
We got you. So, but anybody, please check out Soulfire Farm. When we're talking about self-determination, then let's support. Like Jared said, it's that Jared had posted when him and his family had sent me a donation about what Kwame Ture taught all of us. If we can't take care of each other, then what is the point? And that's how I feel I've been taken care of at a moment where I can take care or be with other people. But come through and tell the fam we said we love you. Thank you so much for having me.
Anytime. Thank you very much. Take good care. We'll catch up soon. Peace. Peace. All right, everybody. Big thanks. Shout out to Rosa Clemente. Shout out to everybody who was able to join us live. To those who will see and hear this later, thanks to you as well. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you can't make financial contributions to the platform, like, share, subscribe. It's free. It does help everything, and get the good word out as much as possible and help BBM withstand all future efforts at our official or shadow bans or whatever the hell else is going on out here. So big shout out again to Rosa and everybody out here doing good work. As Fred Hampton used to say to you, we say peace only if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody. Catch you next time here at I Mix What I Like and throughout the BPM platform. Take care, everybody. I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.